I'm Zoe, a 28-year-old librarian with a past that reads more like a thriller than a quiet bookworm's life. I grew up in a neighborhood that taught me more about survival than any school could. I became a state champion in lightweight boxing and martial arts, not just for trophies, but to stand my ground. They called me Riptide back then, 'cause I was calm until I wasn't, and then I swept everything away. I remember the day I met Alex. It started like any other, with me shelving books and daydreaming between the quiet aisles of the library. But as I left work that day, some wannabe tough guys decided I was an easy target. That's when Alex stepped in, all chivalry and bravado. "Hey, leave her alone," he shouted, stepping between me and them. I rolled my eyes, knowing well I could handle it, but I appreciated the gesture. The thugs laughed. "What are you gonna do about it?" one sneered. Before I knew it, fists were flying. Alex took a hit, and that's when I stepped in. My training kicked in, and within minutes, the thugs were running away, nursing more than their pride. Alex was on the ground, nursing a busted lip. "Wow, that was amazing," he exclaimed, blood and awe mixing in his voice. "I'm Alex, by the way." "Zoe," I replied, offering him a hand up. From that day, we were inseparable. His parents welcomed me with open arms, his mother always saying, "You're the daughter I never had." His father would chuckle, "Well, she's certainly the protector we never knew we needed." But not everyone was a fan. Mark, Alex's younger brother, was different. The first time I met him, he sneered at my job. "A librarian, huh?" he scoffed. "What do you do, read all day?" I shrugged. "And keep the world of knowledge safe for the likes of you." He laughed, a harsh sound. "I prefer my women with a bit more edge." I raised an eyebrow. "Trust me, I've got more edge than you can handle." We left it at that, an uneasy truce between us. But I could tell, this was just the beginning of our story, one that would challenge me in ways I never expected. I went home that night, the house quiet except for the sound of Alex cooking in the kitchen. The smell of spaghetti wafted through the air, a simple pleasure after a long day. "You wouldn't believe the day I had," I started, but he turned, a smile wiping away any fatigue. "Let me guess, another round with the encyclopedia set?" "Something like that," I laughed. We settled into our routine, a peaceful life punctuated by the echoes of my past. I didn't know then how much my old life would come crashing back into my new one, but for now, I was content. I had found a new beginning, a chance at a life I never thought I'd have. First Alex's father passed away, then his mother fell asleep and did not wake up. After the dust had settled with Alex's parents passing, we found ourselves navigating a new normal. They had left us a small, cozy house in a decent part of town, while Mark ended up with an apartment across the city. It seemed like things might calm down, but that was wishful thinking. I remember the day Mark showed up unannounced with his new wife, Lisa. She was a whirlwind of attitude and ink, her tattoos trailing down her arms like battle scars. I was in the middle of sorting through some old boxes when they barged in. "Hey, look what the cat dragged in," Mark announced with a smirk. Lisa stood behind him, chewing gum loudly, her eyes scanning the house like she owned the place. "Nice digs you got here," Lisa said, her voice dripping with a mix of admiration and disdain. I stood up, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Thanks, we like it. And you are?" She laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "I'm Lisa, Mark's better half. And by better, I mean way better." I couldn't help but chuckle. "Well, Lisa, welcome to our home. Just try not to break anything, including Mark." Mark rolled his eyes. "Always the joker, huh, Zoe? But seriously, this place is way too nice for a couple of bookworms. You should see the dump we're in." Lisa chimed in. "Yeah, we were thinking, maybe we could swap, you know? You take the apartment, and we take this little paradise." Alex, who had been quiet until then, laughed. "I think we'll keep what's ours, thanks." The conversation was tense, the air thick with unspoken challenges. Lisa strutted around the house, her every move calculated to intimidate. But I wasn't one to back down. "Listen, Lisa," I started, my voice steady. "This is our home, and you're welcome as family, but don't overstep. We all got to live our own lives." She snapped her gum and stared me down. "Oh, I'm just getting started, honey. I like a challenge, and this place," she gestured around, "is going to be mine." The audacity was almost laughable. Almost. I exchanged a look with Alex, who shook his head slightly, a silent message to let it go for now. They didn't stay long after that, but the tension lingered like a bad smell. After they left, Alex and I sat down in the living room, the silence between us heavy. "Can you believe them?" I finally said, breaking the quiet. Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Mark's always been a handful, but Lisa, she's something else." "I can handle her," I said, more to myself than to him. "I've dealt with worse." But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, that encounter marked the beginning of a series of events that would test our patience and our resolve. Lisa's bold claim on our home wasn't just idle talk. It was a declaration of war, and we were right in the crosshairs. The trouble began in small, annoying ways at first. I'd wake up to find trash thrown over our fence or nasty words spray-painted on the side of the house. "Get out," they'd say, or "not welcome." It was juvenile, but it set me on edge. I had a feeling Lisa was behind it, a suspicion that was confirmed when things escalated. One morning, I found a dead bird lying on our doorstep, a twisted warning. I remember standing there, staring down at it, the anger boiling inside me. I scooped it up with a shovel, my mind racing with dark thoughts. I decided to let it slide for the moment, but then Lisa took it a step further. She came strutting into the library one afternoon, a smug look on her face. I was reshelving books, and she made a beeline straight for me. "Hey, book nerd," she called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. I turned, keeping my face neutral. "Can I help you?" She smirked, her eyes glinting with malice. "Just wanted to see where the famous Zoe spends her days. Quite the boring life you've got here, huh?" I shrugged, trying to keep it cool. "It's a living." "What do you want, Lisa?" She leaned in close, her breath reeking of cigarettes. "Just a friendly visit. But let me give you a little advice. Give up the house, and all this," she gestured around, "stops." Simple as that. Before I could reply, she started knocking books off the shelves, her laughter echoing in the quiet room. I grabbed her arm, stopping her. "Enough, Lisa. Leave now, or I'll call the cops." She yanked her arm free, still smirking. "You wouldn't dare." "See you around, Zoe." I spent the next hour picking up books, my mind a whirlwind of anger and frustration. I wanted to fight back, to put her in her place, but I remembered my promise to stay calm. I couldn't let her see she got to me. That evening, I called Mark, hoping maybe he'd see reason. "Mark, your wife's out of control. She came into the library today, caused a scene. It's got to stop," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause, and then he laughed. Zoe, always so dramatic. Lisa's just having a bit of fun. But I'll tell you what, you give us the house, and I'll make sure she leaves you alone." I clenched my fist, feeling the old fire rise. "That's not going to happen, Mark. Control your wife, or I'll take matters into my own hands." He scoffed. "Big words, Zoe. Just remember, you started this." We hung up, the threat hanging heavy in the air. I didn't tell Alex about the call, not wanting to worry him more than necessary. But I knew things were about to get a lot worse. It was only a matter of time before Lisa or Mark made their next move, and I had to be ready. The tension was like a thick fog, hanging over our home and seeping into every corner. I could feel it, a constant reminder that things were far from okay. It wasn't just the vandalism or the threats anymore. It was the waiting, the not knowing when or what would come next. One evening, as I walked home from the library, my nerves were on high alert. The streets were unusually quiet, the silence amplifying my anxiety. That's when I saw him, Mark, staggering down the sidewalk towards me, a bottle in one hand and a look of drunken fury on his face. "Hey, Zoe," he slurred, his words soaked in alcohol. "Thought you could ignore me, huh?" I stopped, my heart pounding. "Mark, go home. You're drunk." He sneered, taking a step closer. "This is my family's home you're living in. You don't belong here." Before I could react, he swung at me, his fist cutting through the air. Instinct took over. I dodged his blow and grabbed his arm, twisting it behind him. He yelped in pain, his knees buckling. "Listen to me, Mark," I hissed, my voice low and steady. "I don't want to hurt you, but I will defend myself." He struggled, trying to break free, but I held firm. "You're nothing, Zoe. A nobody." With a quick movement, I pushed him to the ground, his body hitting the pavement with a thud. He lay there, whimpering, the fight gone out of him. "Stay away from us, Mark," I warned, my voice cold. "Next time, I won't be so gentle." I left him there, the night, swallowing his curses and threats. As I walked the rest of the way home, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. It was one thing to deal with words and petty acts of vandalism, but this was different. Mark had crossed a line, and I knew it was only a matter of time before things escalated even further. Alex was waiting for me when I got home, his face etched with concern. "Where have you been? I've been worried sick." I sighed, the weight of the evening pressing down on me. Ran into Mark. It got a little heated. Alex's eyes widened. "What happened? Are you okay?" I nodded, trying to reassure him. "I'm fine. Just tired of all this, tired of being pushed around." He wrapped his arms around me, a silent promise of support. "We'll figure this out, Zoe. Together." But as we stood there, clinging to each other, I couldn't shake the feeling that our troubles were far from over. I had reached my breaking point, and there was no turning back. I was ready to do whatever it took to protect our home, to protect our peace. And if that meant facing down the demons of my past, then so be it. I was no stranger to fighting, and I wasn't about to start backing down now. The days that followed were a blur of unease and whispered conversations. The incident with Mark had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. I knew I had to tell Alex everything, but part of me dreaded his reaction. Would he see me differently, knowing the full extent of the violence I was capable of? When Alex finally came home from his trip, I was a bundle of nerves. He looked tired, the lines on his face deeper than when he left. He dropped his bags and pulled me into a hug, a silent question in his embrace. "Zoe, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice laced with worry. "You're shaking." I took a deep breath, the words tumbling out. "It's Mark and Lisa. They've been terrorizing us, and it's getting worse." His brow furrowed, confusion and anger mixing in his eyes. "What do you mean? What happened?" I told him everything, from the dead bird to the confrontation with Mark. With each word, I saw the shock and hurt flash across his face. "You've been dealing with this alone? Why didn't you tell me?" Alex's voice cracked, a mix of anger and concern. "I didn't want to worry you, and I thought I could handle it," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Zoe, we're in this together. You don't have to carry this burden alone." I nodded, the guilt and relief swirling inside me. "I know. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to see this side of me. The side that fights, that hurts people." Alex took my hand, his grip firm. "I married you for all of you, Zoe. Your strength, your courage, it's part of who you are. And I love you for it." We talked late into the night, making plans and discussing our options. But underneath the strategy and determination, there was an unspoken fear. What if it wasn't enough? What if Lisa and Mark didn't back down? The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Alex on the phone, his voice low and urgent. I walked into the kitchen, catching snippets of his conversation. "Can't go on like this. We need to take action," he was saying. "I'll call the lawyer, see what our options are." He hung up and turned to me, a determined look on his face. "We're going to fight this, Zoe. Legally, and if necessary, we'll take other precautions. But we're not letting them win." I nodded, the fighter in me rising to the surface. "I'm with you, Alex. Whatever it takes." But even as we banded together, ready to defend our home, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. Confessing to Alex had lifted a weight off my shoulders, but it also made the threat more real. This was no longer a distant danger, it was at our doorstep, and we were about to face it head-on. The battle lines were drawn, and there was no turning back. The quiet life we had built was about to be tested, and I only hoped that our love and resolve would be enough to see us through. One brisk morning, as Alex and I were enjoying a rare moment of quiet, a loud knock shattered the peace. We exchanged a wary glance before I opened the door. There stood Mark and Lisa, flanked by a group of guys with a rough, gangster edge. Lisa's smug grin told me everything I needed to know. This was her latest attempt to intimidate us, to scare us into giving up our home. "Look what we brought you," Lisa taunted, gesturing to the menacing crowd behind her. I felt Alex stiffen beside me, but I kept my cool. "This isn't going to work, Lisa. You can't bully us out of our own home." That's when the unexpected happened. The apparent leader of the group, a broad-shouldered guy with a commanding presence, stepped forward and burst out laughing. It wasn't the reaction any of us were expecting, least of all me. "Zoe? Is that really you?" he exclaimed, his laughter subsiding into a wide grin. I squinted, taking in his features, a flicker of recognition igniting in my mind. Danny Coleman?" The rest of the group looked on in confusion as Danny nodded, still grinning. "In the flesh. Can't believe it's you, Riptide." The old nickname sent a shockwave through the crowd. I saw the change in their eyes, the way their posture shifted from hostile to respectful. Lisa and Mark were visibly taken aback, the confidence draining from their faces. Danny turned to the group, his voice loud and clear. "Folks, you might not know this, but Zoe here is a legend. We grew up in the same neighborhood, saw her fights. Trust me when I say, she's not someone you want to mess with." The murmurs of acknowledgement and nods of respect were almost surreal. Here I was, facing a potentially dangerous situation, and suddenly I had an advocate in the most unexpected form, a former classmate turned gang leader. Danny addressed Lisa and Mark directly, his tone serious. "You two got it all wrong. Trying to bully Zoe out of her house? That's not going to fly, not with me here." Lisa's voice was barely a whisper, her bravado gone. "But, this is supposed to be our house. We deserve it." Danny shook his head, the finality in his motion clear. "You don't deserve anything by terrorizing people, especially not someone like Zoe." He turned back to me, his expression softening. "Look, I know we've had our differences in the past, but no one messes with you. Not on my watch." As they left, with Lisa and Mark trailing behind, a defeated duo, the neighborhood's silence returned. But it was a different kind of quiet now, one filled with newfound respect and an unexpected sense of security. I closed the door, leaning back against it, the adrenaline slowly ebbing away. Alex wrapped his arms around me, a mix of shock and relief on his face. "I can't believe that just happened." I smiled, the tension finally releasing. "Neither can I. But I'm not complaining." We had faced down a threat with the most unlikely of outcomes. As I looked out the window at the retreating figures, I realized that sometimes, the past doesn't just haunt you, it comes back to lend a helping hand. And with that thought, I knew we were going to be okay. We had stood our ground, and we had won. After the standoff with Danny and his crew, things took a swift turn. The air around our little home was charged with a sense of change, a palpable shift in the winds that had been threatening our peace for so long. The first sign of this change came unexpectedly, just a few days later. I was out in the garden, tending to the roses that had started to bloom again, when I saw Lisa, her usual brashness replaced with a hunched, defeated posture. She was alone, without Mark or any of her so-called friends. She barely glanced my way as she made her way to her car, piled with boxes and bags. It was clear, she was leaving. The news spread quickly. Danny, the unexpected ally from my past, had made good on his word. He kicked Lisa out of the gang, severing her last ties to the community she'd tried to dominate. Without the backing of her tough friends, Lisa no longer felt safe or powerful in the city. Her departure was quiet, almost unnoticed, a stark contrast to the loud, defiant character she had always portrayed. Mark was next. He came by a few days after Lisa's departure, his car filled with the last of his belongings. He stopped by our house, a hesitant figure at the end of our driveway. I went out to meet him, curious about what he had to say. "Zoe," he started, avoiding my eyes. "I'm leaving too. Sold the apartment. It's time for a fresh start, somewhere far from here." His voice was soft, lacking the harsh, mocking tone I'd grown used to. I could see the toll the recent events had taken on him, the realization of his mistakes finally dawning on him. "Mark," I said, my tone neutral, "I hope you find what you're looking for. And I hope you learn from all this." He nodded, a small acknowledgement of the chaos he'd helped create. "I'm sorry, Zoe, for all the trouble. I was wrong." With that, he got into his car and drove away, leaving behind the neighborhood, the conflicts, and a trail of regrets. The street that had once felt like a battleground was quiet again, the tumultuous chapter of our lives coming to a close. Inside, Alex and I watched from the window, a sense of surreal relief washing over us. "They're gone," I said, almost in disbelief. "Just like that." Alex wrapped his arm around my shoulder, pulling me close. "It's over," he whispered. "We can start to move on now." As we looked out at the quiet street, the setting sun casting long shadows over the houses, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the unexpected turn of fate that had led us here. The day Lisa and Mark left, the neighborhood seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. It was as if the air itself was lighter, fresher, and filled with new possibilities. Alex and I found ourselves in a surreal kind of calm, the kind you only notice once the constant noise has gone. One evening, as we sat on our front porch, the last rays of the sun dipping below the horizon, I broke the comfortable silence between us. "Can you believe it's over?" I asked, my voice a mixture of wonder and relief. Alex looked over, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "Honestly, no. It feels like we've woken up from a bad dream." I chuckled, the sound more heartfelt than it had been in months. "A really bad dream. But, hey, we're awake now." With each passing day, the dark chapter of Lisa and Mark faded more into the background. Our home felt like a sanctuary again, a place filled with love and laughter, rather than tension and fear. I returned to my routine, finding solace in the simple tasks of gardening and reading, the library a haven of quiet stability. The simple pleasures of neighborhood life, once overshadowed by fear and conflict, now shone brightly. Evening walks, chats over the fence, the shared experiences of community life, they all took on a new significance. The path had been long and fraught with challenges, but we had emerged stronger, our bonds with each other and with our community deepened. The peace that now filled our home was not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding, resilience, and love.
The evening air felt heavier as I pushed open the door to our modest living room, the familiar scent of home now laced with the tension of the unknown. "Dean?" My voice, steadier than I felt, cut through the silence. No answer. The house seemed to hold its breath as I moved towards the kitchen, the heart of our daily life, now the stage for a revelation that would shatter everything. There, Amidst the scattered evidence of a hastily abandoned meal, stood Dean, his back to me, frozen mid-motion. Beside him, Alara, my once trusted friend, her face a poorly masked tableau of guilt and defiance. The scene before me, stark and unambiguous, rendered words unnecessary, yet I found myself demanding, how long? Dean's turn was slow, his usual confidence replaced by a look I couldn't decipher. Cadence, he started, but the weakness in his voice only fueled my growing storm. Alara spoke next, her tone brazen. Why act so surprised, Cadence? You must have seen this coming. Her words, sharp and reckless, aimed to wound. The pain of betrayal, deep and acute, threatened to overwhelm me, but I stood my ground. You were my friend, Alara, and you, I turned to Dean, you took vows. Our son, our family, do they mean nothing to you? Dean's attempt at justification fell flat, his excuses sounding hollow even to his own ears. It's not what you think, Cadence. We just found comfort in each other. I finished for him, my voice cold, my heart colder. And you thought I wouldn't find out? Thought I'd just accept this? The confrontation, charged with betrayal and hurt, laid bare the fissures in our lives. Dean, struggling to articulate his rationale, and Alara, defiant in her role as the other woman, represented everything I had to fight against. This was not just a personal betrayal. It was a war on the life we had built, on the promises made in the presence of love and trust. As I stood there, facing the two people who had jointly dismantled my trust, my resolve hardened. This was not the end of my story, but the beginning of my fight. For my dignity, for my son, for the life I deserved beyond the shadows of deceit. I want you out, I said finally, my voice steady, my decision irrevocable. Both of you, tonight. Dean's protest was weak, Alara's silence a confirmation of her guilt. As they gathered their things, the weight of the moment settled on me. This was not just a confrontation. It was the first step towards reclaiming my life, towards a future where I no longer played the part of the unsuspecting victim. The door closed behind them with a finality that echoed through the empty house. Alone, yet unbroken, I knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something powerful within me. A determination to rise from the ashes of this betrayal, to forge a new path on my terms. And so, amid the ruins of my fractured life, I began to plan. For justice, for revenge, for a new beginning. The journey ahead would be long, but I was ready. The morning after Dean and Alara's departure, the house felt eerily silent, a void filled with echoes of the confrontation. The silence, however, was a canvas for my determination, a stark reminder of the betrayal and the need for action. I started the day with a purpose, reaching out to Lara, an old friend, and the one person I knew who could help me navigate the legal intricacies of what lay ahead. Lara, it's Cadence. I need your advice, legal advice. Her response was immediate, a testament to our enduring friendship. I'll be there in an hour. We'll figure this out together. As I waited, I couldn't help but replay last night's events, not with sadness, but with a growing sense of empowerment. By the time Lara arrived, I was ready, armed with the facts and fueled by a resolve to seek justice. Lara's expertise was invaluable. First, we secure your financial stability and custody of your son. Then, we address the betrayal. Dean and Alara cannot just walk away from this unscathed. Her plan was meticulous, a blend of legal strategy and personal vindication. We'll start by freezing the joint accounts and filing for sole custody. As for Alara, it's time she learns actions have consequences. The strategy session turned into action quickly. Lara's connections expedited the legal proceedings, and within days, Dean found himself confronted with the reality of his choices. You can't do this, Cadence. You're destroying everything. His voice, once confident, now pleaded over the phone. This is the bed you made, Dean. Now you lie in it. I responded, my voice void of the affection that once colored our conversations. Alara's reaction was of similar disbelief, her previous arrogance replaced with panic. Cadence, please, let's talk about this. We can find a way to make things right. There's nothing left to discuss. You both made your choices, and now you face the consequences, I replied, the finality in my voice mirroring the closure I sought. With Lara's help, the legal battles were swift, leaving Dean and Alara reeling from their losses. But revenge was not solely about legal victories. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about showing that betrayal of trust comes at a price. The community's reaction only added to their downfall. Friends and neighbors, once mutual confidants, sided with me, their disdain for Dean and Alara's actions evident in their support and the isolation that followed for the two of them. As the dust settled on the legal confrontations, a new sense of peace began to take root within me. The betrayal that once threatened to define my existence now served as a catalyst for my transformation. I was no longer the victim, but the architect of my destiny, a woman reborn from the ashes of deceit. With the legal battles behind me, the victory felt hollow. The community's support, while comforting, couldn't fill the void left by Dean's betrayal. It was time to rebuild, to focus on my son and the future we deserved. Yet, the shadow of vengeance lingered, a reminder that justice served did not equate to wounds healed. My resolve was tested when I encountered Dean at a mutual friend's gathering. His presence, once familiar and comforting, now sparked a tumult of emotions. "Cadence," he began, his voice tinged with regret. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." The sincerity in his eyes tempted me to believe, to forgive. But the scars of betrayal ran deep. "Sorry doesn't change what happened, Dean. You chose this path, not me," I replied, my words laced with the pain and strength forged from the ordeal. The encounter with Dean was a turning point, a realization that while legal revenge had been exacted, emotional closure was elusive. It was a lesson in the complexity of forgiveness, in the distinction between justice served and peace attained. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work and into being a mother. My son, innocent, in the wake of our shattered family, became my anchor, his laughter a balm for my soul. Through him I saw the possibility of a future unmarred by the past, a life rebuilt on the foundation of resilience and love. Yet, the journey of healing was not without its challenges. Alara, undeterred by her fall from grace, sought redemption in the eyes of those who had turned their backs. "Cadence, can we talk?" her message read, a plea for understanding, if not forgiveness. The decision to meet her was not easy. Face to face, the woman who had been my friend, then my betrayer, now sought my mercy. "I was wrong," she admitted, her eyes reflecting the weight of her choices. "I've lost everything, but I've learned. I'm truly sorry." The words I had longed to hear, yet their arrival brought no satisfaction. Forgiveness was a journey, not a destination, a path I was still navigating. "I appreciate your apology, Alara, but I can't undo the past, and I can't erase the pain. Maybe in time we'll both find peace." The days turned into weeks, each one a step further from the past and closer to a future I was still shaping. My world, once defined by the actions of others, now took form around the choices I made for myself and for my son. The legal victories and public vindication had faded into the background, replaced by the quieter, more challenging work of rebuilding from within. My journey was interrupted by an unexpected encounter with Dean at a community event. This time, his approach was hesitant, respectful of the distance I had put between us. "Cadence, I've been doing a lot of thinking," he started, his voice carrying a sincerity I hadn't heard before. "I know I can't change the past, but I'm here, trying to be a better person for our son." The mention of our child, the innocent caught in the crossfire of our decisions, softened the hard edges of my resolve. "He deserves the best of both of us," I admitted, the shared love for our son a bridge over the chasm of our past. This acknowledgement marked a shift, a door opening to the possibility of co-parenting with grace, if not friendship. The dialogue between us, once charged with anger and accusation, now treaded the delicate terrain of cooperation and mutual respect for the sake of the child who needed us both. In this new chapter, the antagonist of my story was no longer Dean or Alara, but the bitterness that threatened to poison my future. The realization that forgiveness was not a gift to those who wronged me, but a liberation for myself, began to take root. The process was neither easy nor immediate. There were days when the hurt resurfaced, a reminder of the scars that would never fully disappear. Yet, with each passing day, the choice to forgive, to release the hold of past grievances, became a little easier, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Amidst this personal evolution, a surprising ally emerged in Lara. Her unwavering support had been my anchor through the storm, and now she offered wisdom on the journey of forgiveness. "Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die," she reminded me one afternoon. Forgiveness is for you, Cadence. It's the path to peace. Her words echoed in my heart, a mantra for the days when the weight of the past felt too heavy. And so I leaned into the discomfort, embracing the complex, often messy process of healing and forgiveness. The landscape of my life, once marred by betrayal and hurt, was slowly reshaping into something new, something hopeful. The process of forgiveness had led me down a path of unexpected growth, teaching me that even in the wake of devastation there can be renewal. In this new chapter, I found myself taking steps towards a future I had once thought impossible. My days were filled with the laughter of my son, the support of friends, and the satisfaction of personal achievements. The shadow of Dean and Ilara's betrayal had not disappeared, but had faded into the background, a part of my past that no longer defined me. An opportunity for a fresh start presented itself in the form of a new job, one that promised not just financial stability, but a chance to pursue my passions. "This is your moment, Cadence," Lara encouraged me the day I received the offer. "You've earned this." The decision to accept was easy, propelled by the desire to provide for my son and to prove to myself that I could rise above the challenges that had once threatened to consume me. "We're going to make a great life. Just you and me," I whispered to my son, his small hand in mine, a symbol of our unbreakable bond. But life, as it often does, had more lessons in store for me. Dean's attempt to re-enter our lives, not as a partner but as a father seeking redemption, tested the boundaries of forgiveness I had worked so hard to establish. "I don't want to disrupt your lives, I just want to be a part of his," Dean said during one of our cautious, awkward meetings, gesturing towards our son. The complexity of emotions his request evoked was a reminder of the delicate balance between forgiveness and self-preservation. Yet, watching my son's tentative interactions with Dean, I recognized the value of reconciliation, not for Dean's sake, but for the innocent child who deserved to know his father. This period of adjustment was not without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, of fear that opening this door would invite back the pain I had fought so hard to overcome. But there were also moments of unexpected joy, of witnessing the tentative rebuilding of a relationship between father and son, grounded in cautious hope rather than blind trust. As the seasons changed, so too did the fabric of our lives, weaving a tapestry of resilience, forgiveness, and cautious optimism. The new job had not only brought financial stability, but also a renewed sense of self-worth and purpose. My son thrived in this environment of love and security, his laughter a constant reminder of why every struggle was worth enduring. However, life's narrative is seldom without conflict, and it wasn't long before a new challenge emerged, one that would test the strength of the fragile peace we had built. Ilara, having navigated her own journey of loss and self-reflection, sought to re-enter our lives, not as a friend or foe, but as someone seeking closure and possibly redemption. "Cadence, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I need to make amends," she said during an unexpected encounter at a mutual acquaintance's gathering. The emotions her presence stirred were complex, a mixture of old wounds reopening and the recognition of shared human frailty. Her request for forgiveness, while sincere, demanded a level of magnanimity that felt almost insurmountable. Yet, in the spirit of the growth and healing I had committed to, I found myself willing to listen, if not fully ready to absolve. The dialogue between us was hesitant, each word measured, a dance around the pain of the past and the uncertainty of the future. "I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you, Ilara, but I'm willing to try to understand," I responded, acknowledging the power of forgiveness to heal not just the recipient, but the giver as well. This encounter, though fraught with emotional landmines, paved the way for a new understanding. Forgiveness, I realized, was not an erasure of the past, but a means of liberating oneself from the chains of bitterness and resentment. In the midst of navigating these personal upheavals, a surprise development at work offered an unexpected opportunity for advancement, a testament to my hard work and dedication. "Cadence, your leadership and innovation have not gone unnoticed. We'd like you to lead the new project," my supervisor announced, recognition that filled me with pride and reaffirmed my belief in my abilities and in the promise of new beginnings. The calm that had settled over my life was deceptive, a brief respite before the next storm. Just as I had begun to navigate the complexities of forgiveness and the challenges of my new role at work, an unexpected development threatened to upend the delicate balance I had achieved. A legal notice arrived without warning, a stark reminder that the past was not as far behind as I had hoped. Dean, motivated by a desire to reassert himself in our son's life, was challenging the custody arrangement. "I just want to be a part of his life, Cadence. I'm not the same man I was," he pleaded over the phone, his words echoing a sentiment I had heard before, yet underpinned by a desperation I hadn't seen in him. The battle lines were drawn once again, not in the courts of law this time, but in the arena of personal conviction and the unresolved tensions that lingered between us. "Our son needs stability, Dean. Your actions have consequences," I responded, the firmness in my voice belying the turmoil within. This new challenge forced me to confront not just Dean, but my own fears and uncertainties about the future. The prospect of revisiting old wounds, of fighting once more for what I believed was right for my son, was daunting. In the midst of this upheaval, Alara reached out, her timing impeccable. "I know we've had our differences, Cadence, but I'm here if you need someone to talk to," she offered, a gesture that, months ago, I would have dismissed outright. Yet, the journey we had both embarked on towards healing and understanding had shifted the dynamics between us. "Thank you, Alara. I appreciate that," I found myself saying, surprised by my own willingness to accept her olive branch. As the days passed, the tension surrounding the custody challenge grew. Meetings with lawyers and mediators became a routine part of my life, each encounter with Dean a test of my resolve and a measure of how far we had both come, and how far we still had to go. The dialogue between us was fraught with the weight of our shared history, each word a testament to the complex web of emotions that bound us. "I'm not trying to take him away from you, Cadence. I just want to be a part of his life," Dean insisted, his plea a mix of sincerity and desperation. The resolution, when it came, was not a victory for one side or the other, but a compromise, a mutual agreement to put our son's needs above our own grievances. "We'll make it work for his sake," I conceded, recognizing the value of co-parenting in a way that provided our son with the love and support of both his parents, even if from a distance.